I sometimes actually enjoy warning labels.
Okay.
I know that sounds funny, but like when something says, this is known to cause cancer in California,
Yeah.
I just kind of go, whew, good thing I'm not there.
Right.
There seems to be lots of warning labels out there.
No, I lived in California briefly, and literally everything, this will cause cancer.
And yet, we tease California, but of course, there are lots of things where, in hindsight, we go, yeah, we should have known better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, you could still watch old commercials on YouTube of a room full of doctors smoking, and it's like, when doctors smoke, they choose Camel. I love Camel cigarettes. It's like, excuse me? Someone thought that was a good idea.
I was just, for some reason, like a vintage commercial compilation popped up in my YouTube the other day, and like one of them was a cigarette commercial with this housewife saying, "You're saying this will make me feel better?" not as bad, but better.
Yes, yes. And so the Surgeon General jumped in and at some point advocated for that to happen. It's kind of a funny job, the Surgeon General.
Yeah, because I don't think he does any surgery.
And I think he's a military official, but I don't know that he's leading troops anywhere.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's military or they just like an attorney general, the Surgeon General.
I think you should be news general.
I'll see if Dave can get me a sash.
That's what you should do. But the Surgeon General came out recently. He did an entire editorial in the New York Times explaining himself. There are many articles covering it. He's calling for another warning label to come out from him.
Okay.
He just can't do it alone. I'll explain. Here's how he starts his piece here. One of the most important lessons I learned in medical school was that in an emergency, you don't have the luxury to wait for perfect information. You assess the available facts, you use your best judgment, and you act quickly. The mental health crisis among young people is an emergency, and social media has emerged as an important contributor. Adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media face double the risk of anxiety and depression symptoms, and the average daily use in this group as of the summer of 2023 was 4.8 hours. Additionally, nearly half of adolescents say social media makes them feel worse about their bodies.
Yeah.
Then he says, it is time to require a Surgeon General's warning label on social media platforms, stating that social media is associated with significant mental health harms for adolescents. A Surgeon General's warning label, which requires congressional action, which I just find curious. It's his label.
Yeah.
But it does require congressional action.
Because you have to get private companies to willingly put this label on.
So they get to force them to do it.
Right.
Aha. And doing this would regularly remind parents and adolescents that social media has not been proved safe. Evidence from tobacco studies show that warning labels can increase awareness and change behavior. When asked if a warning from the Surgeon General would prompt them to limit or monitor their children's social media use, 76% of people in one survey of Latino parents said yes. Legislation from Congress should shield young people from online harassment, abuse, and exploitation, and from exposure to extreme violence and sexual content that all too often appears in an algorithm-driven feed. The measures should prevent platforms from collecting sensitive data from children and should restrict the use of features like push notifications, autoplay, and infinite scroll, which prey on developing brains and contribute to excessive use. Additionally, companies must be required to share all their data on health effects with independent scientists and the public. Currently, they do not, and allow independent safety audits. While the platforms claim that they're making their products safer, Americans need more than words. We need proof. And then he concludes towards the end with this. And again, this is Surgeon General Vivek Murthy. He says, faced with high levels of car accident-related deaths in the mid to late 20th century, lawmakers successfully demanded seatbelt airbags, crash testing, and a host of other measures that ultimately made cars safer. This January, the FAA grounded about 170 planes when a door plug came off one Boeing 737 MAX 9 while the plane was in the air. In the following month, a massive recall of dairy products was conducted because of listeria contamination that claimed 2 lives. Why is it that we've failed to respond to the harms of social media when there are no less urgent or widespread than posed by unsafe cars, planes, or food. These harms are not a failure of willpower and parenting. They are the consequence of unleashed, powerful technology without adequate safety measures, transparency, or accountability. And with that, let's talk in just a moment here. He made his case.
Yes.
We know as followers of Christ, it's hurting our kids. It's difficult to have a teenager function in society without a smartphone.
True.
Would a warning label help? I wanted to get the team's input here. Lauren's out. She's back tomorrow. On the Surgeon General's call, it was big news a couple of days ago that there needs to be a warning label, obviously not a physical one, on social media platforms.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that he's envisioned exactly what that would be like. If I was going to make it up in my head, it would be almost every time you open it, you have to click through a warning.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Just like on the pack of cigarettes, it's like front and center on the box.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the obvious choice, right? So you open, for example, Facebook, there's a Surgeon General's warning about the negative impact on the mental health of adolescents and young people from using those platforms. Click the X button, now you're in.
Yeah, or maybe accept.
Oh, wow, yeah.
'Cause then it would imply that, yes, I understand. Yeah.
And he's saying as part of that congressional action that's required to put a Surgeon General's warning on something, they ought to like really ramp it up in terms of what's expected of social media platforms and their reporting and how they use their algorithms. What do we think?
I think it's a great idea. I think social media is one of the biggest health crises facing our modern society. And a lot of people just say, oh, it's just a problem of willpower and self-control. And these platforms are literally designed to be addicting. Like if someone has a drug or an alcohol problem, you wouldn't or you shouldn't blame them because they have a dependency on this substance that is completely rooted in their brain. They need help. And this might be just a small thing for people to say, hey, this is harmful to me, or parents to say I shouldn't have my kids on these platforms. So I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, they've generally been unregulated.
Right.
And they almost make a mockery of our institutions when they're called before government officials to be held account.
Right.
Yeah, they'll smile in your face and go, "Yeah, we're trying. We're working on it." So many times you'll hear that from somebody. Show me your work, because they don't. They never come out and say, "Here's the studies have shown, we're driving children into suicide 10% more or whatever, and here's how we plan to stop it." They just are like, all we're working on is making it even more addictive to everybody using it.
And by the way, the creators of these platforms don't let their own children use it.
Mm-hmm.
So they are clearly dangerous in a way that maybe we don't even understand yet.
Yeah, and I think Christians vary in their view on the level at which government ought to intervene in our lives. But I think all Christians ought to agree that some measure of government intervention is necessary. We have guardrails up for companies. You can't have a monopoly so that we don't end up having price issues in our economy. We've got taxes in place to be sure that our roads are safe and our police and fire are covered.
Yeah, the FDA covers medicines.
Yeah.
So you've got to have approval from them before you can put something out on the marketplace.
And I'm not certain I've heard any Christian ever be like, you know what, these warning labels on cigarettes, get out of my life, government.
I'm not sure that a warning label on social media even classifies as government intervention. It'd be one thing if the government says we're shutting down all social media platforms. That's an intervention. Just making people more aware of the damage they could be causing to their own brains, I think, is just a public service announcement.
Yeah, and I guess part of it is I would rather have it. I mean, forget just young people. It should be a Surgeon General's warning for everybody.
I agree.
And somehow I think the government ought to shut down the way their algorithms work to make it addictive.
Yeah, I do think they need to do something. There are certain places where I think the free market gets out of control, and I think social media is one of those places.
But that's just our 2 cents.
Yeah.
It's something to think through. And, I got to be honest, I haven't heard much from Surgeon Generals in my life. But Vivek Murthy is putting his neck out there and saying this is what needs to be done. So I guess he gets points for that.
Earning his salary.
There you go.